Our main character, Minato, has a special talent for spotting things the rest of us are blissfully unaware of. Back when he was a kid, Minato put a cake out as an offering with his grandpa, and poof, it was gone before he could even blink. Turns out, the culprit was the spirit of a little girl who had made herself at home, scaring the absolute daylight out of him. But Grandpa Minato wasn't fazed in the slightest, mostly just relieved his grandson could finally see her. This little girl was a Zashiki Warashi, a house spirit who'd been chilling in that house since before his grandpa was even a twinkle in his grandpa's eye. Knowing Minato could see beyond the veil, his grandpa just told him to use this unique talent wisely in the future. Years later, our boy Minato was sitting on a mountain of spiritual energy, completely clueless about it, of course. Flash forward to today, Minato's moving into his new pad, tucked away deep in the countryside. Coincidentally, a whole squad of Onmyoji also decided to roll up to the village that very day. The moment he spotted our protagonist, a sharp-eyed Onmyoji named Harima instantly felt something off. Minato, meanwhile, was standing in front of a massive house that, despite its size, was practically oozing with spooky vibes. Anyone else would have probably thought it was an absolute steal. The moment he touched the key to the gate, he felt a peculiar electric tingle, just as a map with smudged ink blurred, and then got whisked away by the wind deep into the mountains, its lingering trace of Minato's spiritual power accidentally waking the village mountain god. Back at his new, spacious but dilapidated house, Minato simply sighed and decided it was time to get cleaning for his fresh start. As he got to work, he gave his mom a quick call. The house originally belonged to a friend of his dad's, but apparently, the poor guy kicked the bucket 2 years ago, leaving the place totally empty. His mom then casually mentioned the garden was basically a jungle, so he could take all the time he needed cleaning it up. Minato wondered why such a perfectly good house hadn't been snatched up, but even his mom drew a blank. But while Minato was on the phone, a strange wisp of black smoke actually smudged the ink on his memo pad. After hanging up, Minato noticed a few flowers scattered on the floor, with no idea who put them there. Meanwhile, the mystery flower delivery service was peeking at him from the bushes. That afternoon, Minato decided to hire some help to tackle the garden. As the two were chatting, a wisp of black smoke suddenly appeared on the worker's shoulder, making him wince in pain. But then, Minato's smudged memo pad conveniently fluttered onto the guy's shoulder, and just like that, the pain vanished. It was then that Minato noticed the ink on his memo pad was smudged again, and next to it, a fresh bundle of mugwort lay on the floor. Of course, neither Minato nor the bewildered worker had any clue where it came from. The very next morning, Minato woke up to find a little pile of fresh berries waiting right on his doorstep. But unlike the last 2 times, Minato accidentally caught a fleeting glimpse of something this time. This little incident immediately jogged his memory back to that childhood encounter. The Zashiki Warashi, that little house spirit, had once given him a 4-leaf clover as a thank you for that cake. So Minato, being the kind soul he is, decided to head into town to get something in return. He picked up some traditional sweets and sake, for offerings. And the moment the mountain god caught a whiff of his delicious barley offerings, it appeared in its true, glorious form to greet Minato, leaving our boy Minato absolutely dumbfounded because, you guessed it, the dog could talk. But it casually dropped the bomb that he wasn't a dog, but actually the mountain god from the neighboring peak. At this revelation, Minato instantly connected the dots. Those mysterious berries and mugwort from yesterday, all from the mountain god. So, our polite country boy Minato headed straight to the market to grab a whole bunch of goodies to properly thank his holy mountainess. Minato brought food and wine for the mountain god, but apparently his divine powers weren't fully charged yet, so he couldn't partake in the festivities. So Minato offered him some bottled mineral water instead, and to the mountain god's surprise, it tasted just as good as his purest mountain spring water. After that, the mountain god thanked Minato, explaining that because of him purifying all the evil aura, he could finally stroll around the village again. Seeing our boy was completely lost, the mountain god clarified. It was Minato's handwriting that purified the evil energy. Just then, the gardener from yesterday showed up, asking to retrieve a few things he'd left behind. Of course, he couldn't see the mountain god sitting right next to Minato, because only special, different people like our MC can even perceive him. After the gardener left, Minato pulled out the last remaining bottle of water to offer the mountain god. But after one sip, the mountain god's divine body literally bristled up. Turns out, it was sparkling water. Even though he wasn't used to it, he had to admit this bubbly stuff was actually all that and a bag of chips. While they were at it, Minato asked the mountain god why his handwriting held such power, but even the divine being didn't have an answer. Pressing for more details, Minato told the mountain god about a mysterious guest who visited his family's inn when he was a kid. This guest praised Minato's beautiful calligraphy and even suggested he write another sign to hang in front of the main house. The guest was even willing to pay Minato extra to make another sign. That whole experience sparked Minato's interest in sign making, and he'd actually already made a few for his new place. Following the mountain god's advice, Minato took these two signs and hung them at the front and back gates of his house. Immediately after, an unknown surge of energy unexpectedly appeared, covering Minato's house and forming a powerful barrier. With this barrier, those pesky evil spirits would now have a seriously hard time bothering our chill MC. The mountain god explained that Minato possessed a truly rare and hard-to-find power. If he diligently trained, his power wouldn't be any less than that of a legendary white-haired shaman. A few days later, the mountain god swung by Minato's house again and was treated to some delicious pastries. Right at that moment, the mountain god's body suddenly started glowing intensely, allowing Minato to perceive him much more clearly. The mountain god explained that it was all thanks to Minato's efforts, because the more respect Minato showed towards the divine, the more the mountain god's power would recover. Minato immediately praised him, saying this was truly a great mountain god, which made the venerable deity literally try to sink into the ground from sheer embarrassment. But Minato also jokingly asked the mountain god to dial down the glow a bit, so he could still actually see the sky, the ground, and the clouds. Meanwhile, young Master Harima and his underlings were busy desk jockeying a desperate battle against evil spirits, and in one careless moment, he accidentally let one of the nastier evil spirits slip away. Harima immediately gave chase, his face etched with worry, because right ahead was a bustling residential area. The evil spirit instantly went on the offensive, randomly possessing one of the civilians on the street. Plot twist. The target turned out to be Minato, so the evil spirit instantly disintegrated the moment it touched our casually OP protagonist. Minato, meanwhile, was busy lamenting to the heavens because the words on his shopping list had mysteriously evaporated somewhere. This left Harima absolutely flabbergasted because such a powerful evil spirit was instantly wiped out by our casual country boy. He rushed over to ask Minato, only to find out our hero was just on his way to buy some trash bags. After its accidental run-in with Minato, the evil spirit turned into a gem and casually rolled into a roadside alley. Today, the mountain god showed up at Minato's house earlier than usual. Seeing that our boy's garden was looking a bit basic, he decided to cast a spell for a little surprise gift. Minato woke up to find his garden sparkling like a million fireflies, leaving him utterly awestruck. The mountain god explained that for him, doing this was as easy as pie. But Minato shrewdly noticed that His Excellency had used quite a bit of spiritual energy for that spell. The proof? The mountain god's body had shrunk considerably, but honestly, that just made him even cuter. Sometime later, the mountain god stopped visiting, making Minato worry that something had happened to him. No sooner had he thought it than the mountain god instantly appeared, telling him not to worry. By now, he was so tiny he was barely the size of a weasel, which completely stunned Minato. This time, the mountain god even brought 3 weasels along, making Minato initially think they were his kids. But then he quickly remembered the mountain god was male, so how could he possibly have children? The mountain god explained that these weasels were his kin, created using his doppelganger spell. This particular feat cost him a lot of spiritual energy, which is why the mountain god had shrunk even further. The 3 weasels quickly introduced themselves to Minato right after. So, Minato decided to offer them the delicious cakes he had just bought from the store. It was their first time eating such delicious cake, so the 3 weasels chomped down without stopping. Meanwhile, the former den chief had to step aside and eat his rice balls, making way for the new den chiefs. After finishing their cake, the 3 den chiefs immediately conked out for a nap, and the mountain god, having finally recovered, reverted back to his default form. Right now, the sorcerer Harima was standing in front of Minato's house, sensing an enormous source of energy, the kind only found among the absolute top tier. Harima then introduced himself as an Onmyoji working for a government agency. He'd witnessed Minato's terrifying power the other day and wanted to buy some exorcism talismans, which our young man couldn't quite grasp. And when he found out that the talismans Minato used were actually just sticky notes, the sorcerer was utterly dumbfounded. Especially since 3 Onmyoji, even combining their powers, couldn't defeat that evil spirit. The mountain god explained that Harima actually wanted Minato's sticky notes, which weren't even worth a single yen. Seeing that, Minato casually wrote out a few for Harima, which left the sorcerer utterly stunned. But then, Harima realized the scribbles on Minato's notes contained an immense amount of spiritual power. After writing just a few of these powerful notes, Minato started to feel a bit tired. So he could only give Harima a few of the valuable sticky notes, and Harima, being a generous guy, Harima even tried to give him more, but our cozy lead was too humble to accept. Feeling guilty about accepting such a massive payout, Minato casually blessed Harima with an extra Onmyoji star symbol on his hand. Right on cue, Harima got a frantic distress call from 2 of his subordinates. Turns out, his 2 teammates were struggling against a humanoid evil spirit. But the moment Harima arrived, Minato's freshly bestowed pentagram instantly vaporized the spirit, leaving Harima utterly bewildered. Meanwhile, the mountain god sat there, proudly admiring Minato's sleeping face. Even after selling a decent stack of notes to our Onmyoji friend, Minato's money still vanished into thin air. Turns out, he'd spent it all buying food for his growing brood of new pit bosses. Even the original pit bosses were chowing down without a cooldown, forcing him to admit they have no concept of table manners. Still, our soft-hearted MC couldn't bear to see their disappointed faces if he served them cheap grub. Just as Minato was crunching the numbers, a mysterious turtle casually appeared in his pond. So our main character decided to pick up some extra work to feed his ever-expanding family of adopted critters. But the meager pay he earned was a literal drop in the ocean compared to the mountain of expensive snacks they devoured. Today, Minato tried his luck with a good old lottery ticket. And of course, our man always snags the jackpot. The prize? A gift voucher worth a cool 100,000 yen. With that kind of cash, Minato could splurge on some top-shelf sake for the mountain god. The moment he stepped into the liquor store, our lucky boy Minato became the 333rd customer, just in time for the store's 333rd anniversary. Naturally, the owner gifted him an entire premium sake set, leaving our MC absolutely baffled by his own absurd luck. Back home, Japan's luckiest man casually recounted his tale to the mountain god. But the mountain god revealed that he had nothing to do with it. Minato's insane luck today was all thanks to the sacred turtle chilling in his pond. Apparently, this turtle is one of the 4 sacred beasts, a legendary creature that brings good fortune. The sacred turtle claimed Minato had once saved its life, but our MC, being Minato, completely drew a blank. So the mountain god had to translate, explaining that Minato had rescued the turtle just the other day, right there on the street. Just then, Minato's mom called, casually dropping the bomb that the other lottery ticket he sent her also hit the jackpot for 1,000,000 yen, completely blowing his mind. Now, our perpetually lucky MC finally believed that the legends of people being blessed by an ancient turtle were actually true. Noticing that the ancient turtle seemed quite fond of his pond, Minato decided to ask the mountain god for his 2 cents. But the mountain god just shrugged, reminding him that it was his garden, so he could do whatever he pleased with it. And just like that, the loyal sacred turtle officially became a resident in Minato's already ridiculously unique garden. Later, Minato offered the sacred turtle a taste of the store's most premium sake. The mere mention of sake sent the ancient turtle into a lightning-fast frenzy, snatching the bottle in an instant. As a thank you, the turtle also gifted Minato some mysterious seeds. Our farming enthusiast decided to plant them in an empty spot in the garden, naturally enlisting the mountain god's help. Minato asked the mountain god what kind of seeds these were, but even he had no clue. The old man just casually told him to chill and wait for the plant to grow, then he'd see. Today, as Minato brought out some fancy cookies for the other chiefs, 2 creatures looking suspiciously like legendary Pokemon suddenly popped up, demanding a share. Turns out, these 2 were none other than the legendary Thunder God and Wind God themselves. They've been depicted in ancient scriptures and folding screens for eons, but in person, they're surprisingly goofy. The mountain god had vanished without a trace, making the wind god think he'd finally been KO'd for good. But he explained he was just on cooldown, waiting for his epic comeback. They heard this place was super chill and easy to live in, so the 2 gods just dropped by to check it out. And they had to admit, the vibe here was incredibly pleasant. Seeing the old turtle god happily guzzling down some booze, the 2 gods immediately started craving a drink themselves. So Minato, being the generous host, decided to bring out all the newly acquired booze and get them completely wasted. To repay Minato for his hospitality, the wind god decided to lend him some of his power. As soon as he said that, Minato felt an immense surge of power rush through his body. The mountain god told Minato, just try imagining yourself using the power of wind. Minato quickly followed the mountain god's advice and conjured up a gentle breeze. This made Minato incredibly happy, because now he could use this wind power to clean up all the fallen leaves in his garden. Meanwhile, Harima was busy obliterating hordes of evil spirits, all thanks to that star Minato drew for him the other day. But today it started to fade, signaling that the borrowed power was almost depleted. Just then, his colleague was suddenly attacked by a humanoid evil spirit. And his female colleague just stood there, frozen to the spot, because that thing was simply too strong. Luckily, Minato arrived just in time, using one of his random notes to purify the evil spirit, much to his colleague's intense jealousy. After they'd cleared the area, that guy asked his female colleague about the origin of the notes Harima was using. The female mage couldn't understand why he was so fixated on Harima. Could it be because Harima was always just better than him? That comment hit the male mage right in his sore spot, making him absolutely furious. He could lose to anyone else, but he'd never ever lose to that handsome, spectacled pretty boy. Today it was pouring rain outside, but it didn't affect Minato's garden in the slightest. The seeds Minato had just sown a few days ago had already sprouted into a lush, vibrant tree. The mountain god explained that it was a divine tree from the Kusunoki estate. So, our unbothered country boy immediately went to water and take care of it. Afterward, Minato brought out some local hot spring buns, a specialty from his hometown, for the mountain god to enjoy. He even asked his mom to send him a climbing outfit so he could conquer the very mountain the mountain god lived on. But the mountain god warned him that to climb that peak, Minato would have to seriously struggle. Otherwise, a casual stroll would leave him flat on his back. Minato understood this completely, which was exactly why he'd asked his mom to send the climbing gear. Though, if he only climbed up to the shrine on the mountain ridge, it wouldn't be too exhausting. Back in the day, lots of people used to visit that shrine, but now it's fallen completely into disrepair. At this point, the mountain spirit decided to send his spirit companions as our boy's personal guides. After a long trek up the mountain, Minato quickly realized this wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Noticing our boy was starting to run out of steam, the three weasels, playing concerned parents, suggested he take a break. But Minato, being Minato, simply brushed them off, saying he could handle this in his sleep. After what felt like an eternity of rough terrain, Minato finally reached the dilapidated shrine, looking exactly as the mountain spirit had warned. Since Minato had shown such genuine respect for the mountain spirit, the companions figured he could skip the chores. But our boy, ever the diligent one, insisted. He reasoned, how would anyone remember the mountain spirit if their shrine fell into disrepair? Hearing Minato's unwavering dedication, the spirit companions could only sigh good-naturedly and lend a hand to our resident cleanup crew. After all that hard work, it was time for a cozy snack break. Minato shared his sweets and drinks with his weasel squad. But just as they were chilling, the weasels suddenly picked up on a super creepy, ominous vibe. Before Minato could even react, the weasels bolted straight towards the source of the evil, forcing our boy to sprint after them. Mid-waterfall, a mass of shadowy smoke coalesced into a full-blown evil spirit, sending shivers down the spine of every spirit animal present. The weasels quickly deduced that the evil spirit had possessed something, contaminating the sacred space. But our unbothered Minato, bless his pure heart, couldn't sense the evil at all. He just sees blessings everywhere, even in a possessed waterfall. The contamination was so intense that even the spirit weasels couldn't get close. So the green weasel, being the brains of the operation, instructed him to use his special notepapers to tackle the menace. The evil spirit was seriously gnarly, so a direct brawl was definitely out of the question for our boy. So, he did what any OPMC would do. He scattered his notepapers into the air and unleashed a powerful wind technique, effortlessly yeeting the evil spirit into oblivion. As soon as the evil spirit was purged, boom, a majestic Kirin materialized right in front of our boy. Minato, ever the polite one, asked if the Kirin was okay, but it just gave him the silent treatment and majestically pranced off further up the mountain. Upon his return, the mountain spirit personally thanked Minato for giving his shrine a much-needed glow-up. Minato then noticed the sacred tree had stopped growing, but everyone quickly reassured him, "Chill, our boy. It's fine." And of course, because our boy can't catch a break, a cute little dragon immediately popped up right outside his house. The mountain spirit explained to Minato that this was a Yinglong, one of the legendary four sacred beasts, just like Ling Kui. The moment it set foot in the garden, the tiny dragon let out a mighty roar, summoning a localized rain shower that made the sacred tree instantly skyrocket in growth. In literally the blink of an eye, that tree transformed into a colossal ancient wonder. Naturally, the little dragon also wanted to join Minato's ever-growing pet collection, so our boy, being a good host, offered it some top-tier sake. Yinglong was super grateful to Minato because, apparently, the star he drew on Harima's hand was the secret sauce that freed the little dragon from those pesky evil spirits. And guess what? Every single time Harima shows up to buy Minato's legendary note papers, he brings a box of gourmet pastries, making every other village chief completely jealous. Oh, and by the way, Harima also wanted Minato to redraw the hand pattern in a checkerboard style, because apparently, the original five-pointed star was his family crest, which is just peak fantasy flex. Since fighting with tiny note papers was proving to be a tad inconvenient, Harima had Minato upgrade his power source by writing on sleek business cards instead. And one of the village elders couldn't help but joke that if Harima just added a tight superhero suit, he'd be set as the Gramps warned Harima to keep Minato's absurd power on the down low, fearing it might accidentally stir up trouble for the regular folks. But, unfortunately for everyone's peace of mind, that petty hater Icho, who's always been jealous of Harima, found out about Minato's existence. Trying to be slick, Aiko accidentally bumped into Minato on the road, slapping a suspicious charm onto his back. As our resident mountain god was casually writing some notes, he instantly pinpointed the sketchy charm that clown Iko put on Minato. Just a few days earlier, Harima had dropped by to ask Minato if any annoying little troublemakers were pestering him. See, after that petty bully found out Minato was casually crafting charms for Harima, he instantly developed a major vendetta against both of them. Harima warned Minato to be super careful, because Icho was the type to unleash literal vengeful spirits just to keep tabs on people. Minato didn't even notice the shady charm Ichizo slipped onto him, but our benevolent mountain god obliterated it in the blink of an eye. A few days later, Ichizo and that same girl from earlier showed up at Minato's place, literally demanding he become their personal, exclusive charm maker. The moment they arrived, he practically hammered Minato's doorbell into oblivion, but our unbothered lead couldn't be less bothered. This sent Iko into a full-blown rage, making him stomp right up and kick Minato's gate, ignoring his colleague's warnings. But the moment his foot actually touched the entrance, Iko was instantly whisked away to a dimension that looked suspiciously like the underworld. He immediately bolted for his life, only to hilariously trip on a patch of grass and smash his head right into a rock. When he finally came to, Ichizo discovered he had been unceremoniously dumped back at the shrine. At first, the eerie whispers of the wind sent shivers so far down his spine, the poor guy almost wet himself. Rewind a few hours, and we find our laid-back Minato and the mountain god casually catching up on the choo-choo newspaper. And when our resident lord dog discovered his favorite bakery had dared to change their pastry filling, he was absolutely beside himself with divine rage. So our ever-patient Minato had no choice but to escort the mighty mountain god to the bakery for an immediate investigation. The sheer presence of the mountain god on the street casually blessed every single passerby, without them even realizing it. While they were at it, Minato casually led the mountain god into a pottery shop to pick out a brand new, premium water bowl for him. And then, because why not, he also snagged a plush new bed to ensure our canine deity could rest in ultimate comfort. The moment they stepped into the bakery, the mountain god, with absolute authority, demanded Minato inform the old shop owner to cease and desist with the whole bean filling. Hearing Minato had just climbed the adjacent mountain, the shop owner, completely clueless, asked if he'd met the dog god yet. This, of course, did not please our wolf god in the slightest. Back when our now-wise shop owner was just a hot-headed, impulsive young buck, he accidentally wandered deep into the Forbidden Mountain and stumbled upon a mysterious shrine. That's when a colossal dog-like creature unexpectedly materialized, scaring the poor guy so badly he literally ran out of his shoes. But the notoriously playful Lord Dog had zero intention of stopping, continuing their game of chase and forcing the shop owner to literally bolt through the forest. Only once he burst onto the main road did he finally realize the monster was actually just casually guiding him down the mountain. After that whole ordeal, he decided to nickname the mountain god the Guiding Demon Dog, which, as you can imagine, absolutely infuriated our wolf god. And to express his eternal gratitude, he's been regularly bringing delicious pastries to offer at the shrine ever since. When Minato first arrived in town, he couldn't help but notice the shop owner's body was so frail, he was practically 1 foot in the grave. Turns out, he'd been suffering from a severe stomach illness, which meant no more of his beloved fried foods. Consequently, both his physical health and his overall spirit had taken a serious nosedive. Because gods can't directly interfere with human life and death, the mountain god found a convenient loophole. He decided to bless that same young man with a perfectly healthy body until his natural time came. Because the mountain god simply couldn't let such a delicious dessert recipe disappear from the world. Back at his place, Minato promptly hung the new wind chime he'd just bought. He then pulled out some cake and wine for the mountain god while he went to take a bath. And then that arrogant exorcist wannabe showed up, completely ruining the wolf god's chill party vibe and making him absolutely furious. Back in the present, Ichizo was throwing a frustrated tantrum, trying to smash the shrine, but it wouldn't even budge. So he tried to escape this pocket dimension again, only to get continuously crushed by rocks and fall into endless pits. And every time he logged out of this weird space, Ichizo would just wake up right back next to the shrine, making him absolutely depressed. After trying literally everything he could think of, Ichizo finally felt completely exhausted. He knelt before the shrine, desperately begging the gods to send him back to his original world. Ichizo finally admitted his disrespect toward the mountain and expressed deep regret, ceaselessly pleading with the mountain god to release him. Finally, after a heartfelt apology and some serious begging, Ichizo was returned to the real world, much to the astonishment of his colleague. Ichizo asked her how many days she'd been waiting, only to find out they had just arrived, moments ago. This revelation sent the young man into a complete panic, causing him to bolt straight out of the house. Minato heard the doorbell ring while he was in the bath, but the mountain god casually informed him there was no one there. It had been a while since Minato was back home, so he was really missing the cozy vibe of a good old homemade hot spring bath. So, like the ultimate cosmic concierge, the mountain god decided to whip up a mini hot spring that very night. The very next morning, Minato woke up to find a brand new, fully functional hot spring right there in his garden. The mountain god was already waiting for Minato's morning dip, so our lead casually dragged his 3 legendary waifu companions down to enjoy it too. I mean, a private hot spring right in your own backyard? That's just peak cozy flex, absolute chef's kiss. He tried to call the ancient turtle and little dragon down to join, but the mountain god informed him those 2 waifus were still asleep at the bottom of the pond. Apparently, last night, right after manifesting the hot spring, the mountain god, the ancient turtle, and the little dragon had an all-night drinking party. After their bath, the mountain god went to brew some tea, while Minato just flopped onto the floor, soaking in the absolute post-soak bliss. Just then, the golden weasel popped in to inform Minato they had guests. Turns out, they were acquaintances of Yinglong and Lin Gui. Minato opened the door to find the unicorn he'd rescued from the mountain just a few days ago, shyly hiding in the fields. This particular unicorn was so introverted, it literally couldn't bring itself to speak directly to Minato. It took the weasel translator to finally figure out that the unicorn wanted to settle down in his village. Once it was safely in the garden, the unicorn bowed and sincerely thanked Minato for saving its life that day. To earn its spot in this glorious garden, the unicorn immediately started showering Minato with endless, over-the-top flattery. It went on flattering Minato for a solid 3 minutes and still wasn't done, forcing the 3 weasels to take turns translating the epic monologue. The unicorn then proceeded to flatter Minato for another 30 minutes, to the point where everyone else was too bored to even comment. To repay its life debt, the unicorn declared it would make Minato a monarch, ruling half the world, leaving our MC understandably stunned. But let's be real, this creature who struggled with a simple evil spirit was probably just spewing 36% pure baloney. As for Minato, he politely declined the offer, which completely floored the unicorn. This ancient being had always viewed humans as pathetic creatures, constantly tearing each other apart for meager resources. But the Wind God and Thunder God were quick to explain to the Kylan that our protagonist wasn't that kind of human. Seriously, even if he owned half the world, he'd probably just want to grow turnips instead. During this visit, our boy Minato noticed the 2 deities were looking a bit buffer. The Wind God explained that it was all thanks to Minato's non-stop, humble reverence that they were steadily regaining their divine powers. So, as a thank you, they brought him a perfectly fresh swordfish and whipped up some delicious sashimi. Oh, and while they were at it, the Wind God also dropped some casual cheat codes on how to control wind power. The Wind God, being a god and all, immediately sensed that Minato was holding back his true power, afraid of accidentally yeeting his friends. So, the god encouraged him to just go all out for once and see what kind of chaos he could really unleash. After all, truly embracing your overwhelming power can be pretty exhilarating, you know? Right on cue, Minato got a text from his mom. Their family sign had broken. He barely even blinked. This was basically a daily occurrence for our unbothered lead. But the mountain god, with his divine senses, picked up on something. A non-human entity was deliberately messing with those signs. And it wasn't malicious. They were trying to tell Minato that his protection charms had expired. This immediately made Minato think of his resident Zashiki Warashi, the little spirit living in his house. Turns out the signs Minato crafted were imbued with magic, protecting his family from annoying evil spirits. So when those protection charms wore off, the Zashiki Warashi was just giving him a friendly little reminder to whip up some new ones. But replacing them constantly was getting inconvenient, so Minato asked the mountain god if there was a way to permanently upgrade the family sign. The mountain god suggested he try using the power of wind, but first, he had to take him to a secret back entrance near his home. Behind that gate was a massive forest, conveniently crafted by the mischievous fox trio during their stay. The mountain god told him to go wild and unleash his power, because all the trees in this personal dimension were basically props anyway. Meanwhile, while Minato was out, the Kylan, being the extra mythical beast it is, brought him a durian as a thank you gift. But the little dragon and Grandpa Turtle were not having it, thinking this overgrown unicorn was once again trying to pull a prank. Back with Minato, he was channeling every ounce of his power to summon a colossal hurricane. He couldn't sustain it for long, though, because even an OP country boy has his limits, apparently. After he came to, Minato quickly whipped up a few temporary signs to send back home. In the following days, he continued his wind control training with the mountain god. After some dedicated training, Minato could finally infuse a significant amount of spiritual energy into the family sign he'd sent. Meanwhile, our friendly neighborhood mage, Harima, just happened to stumble upon an area positively reeking of dark energy. After mastering his ultimate wind techniques with the mountain god, Minato could now effortlessly use wind to clean up trash around the garden. Even the mountain god had to admit Minato was a more deserving successor to the ultimate wind arts than Jesua. But our humble farming king, Minato, just casually brushed it off, claiming he was. Just as he finished, the wind god popped in, congratulating him on mastering his newfound power. The wind god eagerly awaited Minato, reaching a level where he could effortlessly split the houses of anyone he didn't vibe with. Seeing that, the thunder god also casually offered Minato his power, but our boy was too tired to train, so he politely declined. Minato's garden was super peaceful now, with his adorable ferret familiars busy cultivating their powers. Right now, they were all nose-deep in training in Minato's backyard pocket dimension. Because after their last encounter with that mountain's evil spirit, Those ferrets felt super salty they couldn't really help Minato, so they dove headfirst into this training montage. But let's be real, those ferrets trained for like 3 minutes before flopping over to nap. Points for effort, but not exactly hero level. Afterward, Minato casually gathered some leaves to start a fire, ready to roast some sweet potatoes and chill with the mountain god. Honestly, eating roasted sweet potatoes in this garden looks straight out of a cozy anime aesthetic. The elder turtle preferred sweet potato shochu over the actual roasted spuds, while the little dragon literally inhaled anything and called it gourmet. Minato genuinely hoped the wind god and thunder god would just kick back, feast, and drink like they owned the place. But let's be real, the wind god and thunder god could whip up roasted sweet potatoes anytime they wanted. No sooner had he spoken than the wind god casually tossed the sweet potato basket from Minato's hands, and then the thunder god dramatically conjured the legendary dark sweet potatoes. Just then, a Keelan casually strolled over, bringing Minato a few rambutans. To thank Keelan for the exotic fruit, he invited it to munch on some roasted sweet potatoes. But the Keelan, bless its heart, totally misunderstood and thought our boy was about to roast it like a sweet potato. After spending some time together, Minato realized the Keelan still hadn't truly opened up, so the mountain god casually dropped a suggestion. Bro, just invite it for a beer. Right on cue, the sorcerer Harima showed up, literally dragging his exhausted body, looking for Minato. After ushering Harima inside for some much-needed rest and recovery, Minato finally asked why he looked like he'd just fought a god. Apparently, Minato's garden was currently hosting a literal pantheon of gods, which was, understandably, stressing Harima out. He explained there was an evil spirit so overwhelmingly powerful that even a squad of high-tier Onmyoji couldn't take it down, so naturally, he wanted Minato to casually drop by and fix it. It all started when some poor soul brought a cursed doll to the temple for purification, but oops, the resident master exorcist had passed on. And because of that oversight, the doll mutated into a super-duper powerful evil spirit, probably because its original form was, get this, a literal god. Now, its sheer spiritual dread was so intense that the Onmyoji couldn't even get within a mile of it without fainting. That temple wasn't even in this world. It was chilling in a special alternate dimension, and guess who's the only one who can waltz right in? Because after a few casual hangouts with Minato, Harima realized our boy could literally chat up the gods chilling in his backyard. This, however, made the mountain god unbelievably peeved. He unleashed immense pressure that made Harima visibly shake. Because, let's be real, it looked like Harima was trying to exploit the mountain god's precious human pet. So even the ferrets had to jump in and tell him to chill out, bro. Turns out, the mountain god's power was the only VIP pass that could get Minato into that specific alternate dimension. However, to secure the mountain god's assistance, Harima had to agree to some very specific conditions. That very night, Harima had to show up with a literal mountain of premium snacks and sweets to persuade the mountain god. But even with the bribe, he still refused to personally escort Harima to the other world, because, plot twist, Minato's own personal squad of familiars would be his companions this time. After a seriously intense training montage, the Weasel Squad is back and leveled up. They're meant to be Minato's trusty companions on this journey, but because they're so easily sidetracked, he still had to prepare for everything. Just as Minato was leaving the garden, leaves from the divine tree subtly floated into his clothes. Afterwards, Minato boarded a high-speed train, leaving his peaceful countryside for the bustling city. En route, the Weasel Squad was immediately lured by the irresistible scent of piping hot apple pies. So Minato, the absolute MVP, had to begrudgingly shell out his own money to treat these little gluttons, his essential comrades, for their upcoming fight. While everyone was busy chowing down on those piping hot apple pies, a flock of crows suddenly appeared directly above them. The green weasel noticed the crows seemed to be trying to lead the group, so Minato had no choice but to follow their guidance. Following the crows, Minato arrived at a village reeking of malevolent spiritual energy, all emanating from a nearby temple. The malevolent energy from inside the temple was so dense that even the crows didn't dare to fly in. And no wonder, because the foul energy radiating from here was truly horrifying. Even an ordinary person like Minato could see it as clear as day. Minato called Harima and found out his group was already waiting at the temple's back gate. Harima and his two comrades had used every type of charm and spell imaginable, yet still couldn't get inside the temple. Although Harima was the one who asked for Minato's help, he still urged him to prioritize his own safety. Minato just casually replied that if he encountered any danger, he'd simply figure something out. Minato then touched the door, only to be pushed back by a surge of malevolent energy. So the three Weasel brothers teamed up, pushing open the temple door to clear a path for Minato. He stepped inside and quickly spotted the ringleader doll sitting directly before him. Just then, a gloomy scream erupted from within the temple. A surge of malevolent energy immediately flew to attack Minato, forcing him to pull out his memo paper to defend himself. It was then that the malevolent energy revealed its true form, a swarm of soulless dolls. 3 other dolls immediately jumped out to attack Minato, giving the Weasel trio a chance to show off the fruits of their training. The dolls that rushed forward were instantly sent flying to the floor by punches from the Weasel trio. Just as they were feeling proud for landing a punch on the doll, it used its hair to tightly ensnare the orange weasel. The green weasel immediately rushed over and slashed through the hair, rescuing his friend. And when the strands of hair were severed, the dolls officially shut down. Just then, a chilling howl erupted from deeper inside the temple. The final red boss doll suddenly appeared from within, startling the entire group. The amount of foul energy it radiated was even more horrifying than the dense foul energy already surrounding the temple. It immediately created a massive zone of oppressive power that crushed every living creature nearby. Yet the Weasel Squad's only fear was that their freshly bought apple pies would all be ruined. To deal with this final boss, Minato tossed his signature memo papers into the air. He used his wind mastery to send the talismans attacking the doll, but it blocked them with its hair. Then it swatted its hand, sending the ferret trio tumbling flat on their backs. Despite their injuries, they struggled back up, urging Minato to be careful. Because at that moment, the doll had wrapped its hair around Minato, trapping him in a suffocating cocoon of doom. Helpless, he could only call out to the mountain god from afar. And the Wolf Lord seemed to have predicted this very moment. Just as Minato was about to pass out, he suddenly heard the voices of the Green Ferret trio. Because at this crucial moment, the 3 familiars had received the mountain god's blessing, making them stronger than ever. They immediately unleashed their divine power, blasting the doll far away and rescuing Minato from his hair cocoon prison. After taking the mountain god's surprise attack head-on, the doll was pretty much down for the count. Minato, who was just waiting for this, used his purification pen to cleanse the evil spirit inside the doll. He also realized that they had all just received an assist from the mountain god. Even with the doll purified, it seemed the temple was still overflowing with malevolent energy. Minato stepped further inside and found a deity possessed by an evil spirit. He pulled out his notes to rescue the god, only to find his entire stack of papers was empty. So Minato had to hurriedly write new notes to purify the poor deity being torn apart by all those vengeful spirits. But instead of working, it only caused the surrounding dimension to begin collapsing. Just then, the ferret noticed a divine tree leaf tucked inside Minato's hood. This divine tree leaf also possessed spiritual power, meaning it could purify the vengeful spirits. Though by now, our boy's spiritual power was getting dangerously low from writing so many talismans. Still, he pushed through, pouring his remaining energy into completing a special talisman on the divine tree leaf. Thanks to his quick thinking, he was able to free that unfortunate deity from the wicked, defiling spirits. Harima realized the dimension was collapsing and tried to rush in and save Minato, but his teammates held him back. To survive and return to the real world, Minato ran for his life from the rapidly crumbling temple. Just as a tree was about to fall on Minato, the wind god and thunder god appeared just in time, smashing it to bits. But then, everyone still tumbled down into a massive fissure created by the dimension's collapse. When he opened his eyes, Minato realized he was back in the real world, facing the ruins of the temple, with the 2 wind and thunder gods standing proudly beside him. A few days later, Harima sent his thanks to Minato and asked him to deliver some small appreciation gifts to the guardian gods. Minato's household pets were having a barbecue party in the garden, and he casually dropped a bonus pile of delicious food for them. He also seized the chance to offer wine to the 2 gods who saved his life, and even bought extra beer to invite Lord Keelan. The Keelan returned the favor with a durian, but the old turtle had a strict no durian in the house policy, so the 2 instantly started brawling. Minato also made sure to give special thanks to the divine tree for saving his hide. Oh, and by the way, the deity Minato rescued inside the temple. That was the phoenix, the last of the 4 divine beasts. Today, Minato swung by with some strawberry daifuku for the mountain god, and even the wolf god couldn't help but praise his impeccable taste. Ever since our resident phoenix decided to grace the garden, she's been running a spelling class for the local Minna birds. She'd scold the slow learners and heap praise on the clever ones, truly embodying the spirit of a no-nonsense educator. Even Minato had to admit, the phoenix was practically the garden's official hype woman. Because ever since she arrived, the garden has been noticeably livelier. The phoenix is super extroverted, but the other 3 sacred beasts? They're practically the definition of introverted. While Minato was busy soaking in the garden's peaceful spring vibe, a space portal decided to just casually pop open in midair. Meanwhile, Harima and his Onmyoji crew were absolutely grinding their KPIs because, plot twist, it was the Spring Evil Spirit Festival. Since these were just some small fry evil spirits, our guy casually advised Harima to conserve his energy. Right on cue, our guy summoned 2 Shikigami to effortlessly clean up all the surrounding evil spirits for him. Just then, Harima got a notification that evil spirits were popping up somewhere else, so our unlucky Onmyoji had to go chase those KPIs all over again. Meanwhile, our blessed Onmyoji was leisurely strolling through town, doing some shopping without a care in the world. Oh, and apparently, the townspeople have recently started calling him the Master Bird Caller because the phoenix keeps attracting literally all the local birds. After walking a bit further, Minato stumbled upon the local gardener, who was tending to the plants like they were his actual waifus. For some reason, ever since he started cleaning Minato's garden, the gardener has been way more enthusiastic about his work. Of course, all those birds were now landing and messing up the plants, so Minato politely excused himself to leave. Back home, the mountain god was getting urgent alerts from his subordinates. Abandoned holy sites were popping up everywhere, and Minato still wasn't back from his shopping spree. This was pretty dangerous, so the mountain god decided to personally step up and confront the threat. Just then, all the birds that were following Minato suddenly flew away, which he found pretty weird. Right after that, the wind and thunder gods materialized, telling him to get back home immediately. Apparently, today wasn't just about evil spirits. Abandoned holy sites were also popping up like crazy. In this world, there are roughly 8 million gods, so naturally, the number of holy sites is absolutely insane. And a good chunk of those are abandoned, which of course churns out a ton of evil spirits. No sooner had they said that than a portal appeared in the sky, only to be instantly obliterated by the thunder god. Those were the rumored abandoned holy sites right there. And they can pop up literally anywhere, both in the sky and on the ground. Plus, sometimes people even get sucked inside them. This also explained why that flock of birds from earlier suddenly scattered. The two gods warned him to be extra careful, because apparently he has an insanely high compatibility with divine beings. And to make things even more ridiculously blessed, he's always soaking in the mountain god's personal hot springs. And if Minato accidentally stumbled into one of those abandoned holy sites, the chances of him escaping by himself were, well, ridiculously low. Before leaving, the wind and thunder gods also reminded Minato that the mountain god had to personally go out and destroy the territories. It was only then that Minato finally grasped how serious the situation actually was. So he decided to take a shortcut back home. Meanwhile, the mountain god and his subordinates had just arrived at the areas where abandoned holy sites were densely appearing, ready to destroy them. As our boy Minato was heading home, he stumbled upon an abandoned shrine. A spirit tried to warn him to stay away, but because Minato's spiritual power was too weak, he couldn't hear a thing. Right on cue, a mysterious gate appeared inside the shrine and instantly sucked Minato in. Seeing this, the bird boy immediately reverted to his phoenix form to rescue Minato. But because his spiritual power wasn't enough, both of them were instantly pulled inside. Behind the gate was a vast forest, giving Minato the exact same feeling as when he first stepped into the doll temple. Since the air density here was quite low, Minato quickly moved to find a way out. After moving for a while, Minato discovered a place filled with many old chests. Recalling what the mountain god had said earlier, a sanctuary is like a mental landscape, a reflection of its creator's mind. That god would create a space where they felt most comfortable. Thanks to this, Minato confirmed that this particular god had a deep passion for wooden chests. Afterward, Minato discovered a stone cave, and inside it there were also many wooden chests. At the end of the cave was a girl sound asleep, and she seemed to be the god who created this space. The air here was incredibly humid, which annoyed her to no end, but she was just too lazy to do anything about it. Seeing this, Minato asked if this was indeed the sanctuary she had created. The god confirmed it was, and quickly sensed that Minato carried many blessings. She remembered sealing the sanctuary before she fell asleep, so Minato must have just wandered in by accident. So Minato had to explain how the outside world was being encroached upon by expanding abandoned territories. Although the god before him hadn't abandoned her sanctuary, her power had significantly weakened. She tried to check the outside world, saw her shrine was terribly dilapidated, but was too lazy to do anything about it. She then realized Minato had an affinity with the wind god, as his entire body radiated the wind god's power. The wind god was known to be quite a difficult deity, so the fact that he bestowed power upon a human made her incredibly curious about Minato. So she asked Minato to use the wind god's power to purify the polluted atmosphere around them. According to the human calendar, the last time she purified the air here was about 1,000 years ago. Because humans multiplied too quickly, she was almost completely forgotten by them. This caused her power to decline day by day. After asking Minato for help, the lazy god rolled over and went straight back to sleep, which completely annoyed him. So, he hoped she could teleport him out of here after he was done cleaning up, because she looked like a truly irresponsible god. While they were at it, she also asked Minato to help throw the pile of wooden chests from inside the cave into the gate. Our boy then used the wind god's power to clean up the pile of junk inside the lazy god's home. And when she saw Minato skillfully wield the wind god's power, she couldn't help but praise a human like him. After a period of hard work, the Weasel Trio was able to use that power to destroy the abandoned sanctuaries. Even though they had cleared all the northern gates, the mountain god told them their work wasn't finished yet. they still had to go save Minato's butt. This had our three big shots sweating bullets. Turns out that Phoenix's shriek earlier was just a casual 911 call to the mountain god. No sooner had he spoken than a gazillion portals popped up in the sky, blocking the crew from getting to Minato. But thankfully, the wind god and thunder god made a dramatic entrance just in time to back up the mountain god. But the mountain god was like, nah, I'm staying put, fam. Instead, he casually dispatched three of his homies to rescue Minato. Cause let's be real, he's basically the dad of this whole region. Right then, the mountain god flexed his power, unleashing an absurd amount of energy, casually nuking all the floating sanctuaries in the sky, which instantly triggered a nostalgic flashback for the wind and thunder gods, reminiscing about their old world domination days. After a quick nap, our resident lazy goddess's cave was, surprisingly, looking a smidge cleaner. Noticing the vibe was still a bit stuffy, Minato pulled out some leaves from his divine tree to air out the place. Minato had first stumbled upon the cheat code potential of his divine tree after that whole doll temple fiasco. Ever since, he's been keeping a stash of those magic leaves on him, just in case. Seeing this flex, the lazy goddess was like, yo, hook me up with one of those leaves, I gotta see this. So in exchange for some leafy goodness, she decided to casually lend Minato a bit of her OP divine power. This power basically let Minato trap anything, even abstract concepts like human emotions, other people's powers, or literally any item he felt like. She then handed him the divine user manual, shrugging. Whether you can actually use it or not is your problem, kid. If he felt extra spicy, Minato could even trap those things permanently, no biggie. Then she just rolled over and went back to sleep, leaving our boy Minato panicking because his stay-at-home waifu still hadn't gotten him out of there. Luckily, the three green weasels made a clutch appearance, just in time to extract our cozy lead. They also kinda apologized for ditching him, admitting they got a bit sidetracked by all those neglected ancient sanctuaries. Minato then spilled the tea to the trio, revealing that inside the sanctuary was basically a god who was all about eating and zero about working. He also mentioned the god gave him the power of imprisonment, which instantly made the trio's eyes widen. Bro, that's Lord Amaterasu! Minato was absolutely flabbergasted. It was only then Minato connected the dots. That random bird had turned into a phoenix to alert the mountain god, and those trusty wind spirits had guided the green weasels straight to him. This made Minato recall the mysterious voice that had casually warned him before he even stepped into the shrine. He then sensed the presence of the wind spirits all around them, sending out a mental thanks, fam, to the crew. If those wind spirits hadn't shown up on time, the three green weasels would have never found Minato, and he wouldn't be here chilling and gossiping with them right now. Meanwhile, Harima suddenly ran smack dab into a squad of exorcists. Onmyoji and exorcists have always been beefing, like a classic water and fire rivalry, even though both claim to be fighting the same monster-slaying fight. Harima had heard whispers recently about a certain exorcist squad charging absolutely cutthroat prices for their services, which instantly raised his something's fishy radar. Minato even had a bag of goodies for the mountain god, but by the time he got there, the god had powered down into... Minato thought the mountain god's whole vibe made him a perfect fit to chill with the four divine beasts. After its last dramatic transformation to call for backup, the fire phoenix just zonked out in its cave for days, totally wiped. The mountain god, ever the expert, said it'd be back on its feet soon enough, because come on, a divine beast doesn't just get knocked out by some minor exertion. So, Minato started pulling out dusty boxes from his closet, determined to master the sun god's legendary power of confinement. Because, if he could just master this little trick, he could be even more of a help to Harima and the other Onmyoji. Apparently, the sun goddess's sanctuary was just overflowing with wooden chests because she'd confined a lot of things inside them. Which, of course, meant Minato had to scrounge up some boxes of snacks to practice his confinement skills on. But our observant mountain god quickly noticed that the energy inside those snack boxes was still leaking out like nobody's business. To truly use this confinement power, the mountain god revealed that Minato would need something called Imagine. And while the two of them were busy with their impromptu training session, the fire phoenix slowly started to stir. Our boy Minato had been getting tons of visitors scheduling meetups recently, but they all kept canceling at the absolute last minute. Which honestly was a win for the mountain god, who got to devour all the snacks Minato had bought for his would-be guests. And Minato genuinely couldn't grasp why anyone would skip out on a visit to his serene, peaceful garden, especially one guarded by a literal mountain god. The vibrant jade green and soft pink hues of the cherry blossom manju totally had the mountain god feeling the true essence of spring, but Minato's actual garden wasn't exactly screaming spring at the moment. No sooner had he finished that thought, the mountain god just casually snapped his fingers, and boom! Minato's entire garden exploded with cherry blossoms, leaving our boy absolutely dumbfounded. And after casually dropping that garden-wide upgrade spell on Minato's place, the mountain god suddenly shrunk down, completely drained of spiritual power. This time, the mountain god warned it would take him a good long while to return to his usual majestic form. Minato, ever curious, asked how the mountain god actually used his power, and the mountain god's answer? Just a simple gaze. This immediately brought back the goddess's earlier advice to Minato. Find the method that suits you best. And right on cue, Minato's brain instantly went to his own ridiculously powerful notepapers. Maybe, just maybe, these could even confine purification power. Right at that moment, birds unexpectedly burst into song, making Minato feel his garden truly blooming with spring vibes. And that, my friends, meant the little fire phoenix had officially made its comeback after a much-needed beauty nap. No sooner had it woken up than it immediately started giving a harsh lesson to a nearby bird that apparently couldn't sing for beans. The next morning, the mountain god casually dropped a bombshell. He wanted Minato to go dig up some bamboo shoots, leaving our boy utterly perplexed. Apparently, the mountain god's mountain was packed with bamboo shoots, and who knew, maybe a taste of spring would somehow help Minato control his confinement power. While Minato was forced, casually foraging for bamboo shoots, the wind and thunder god just popped over to the garden for a casual drinking session with the mountain god. The wind god casually recounted how he'd recently escorted some insolent mortals into his sanctuary for a bit of a divine timeout. And just a few days prior, the mountain god had done the exact same thing to some disrespectful Onmyoji. Which, fair enough, you don't just go kick in a god's front door. While the trio were busy enjoying their divine beverages, an entire abandoned sanctuary suddenly materialized in the sky. The mountain god immediately clocked Minato as the walking sanctuary magnet, so the thunder god, ever efficient, zapped it away. The thunder god had seen plenty of folks with sanctuary attracting abilities before, but Minato's particular brand of magnet power was just plain weird. It was probably just because Minato, a mere mortal, was living right inside a god's sanctuary that he ended up with this absolutely wild special ability. Who knows, maybe in the not-so-distant future, our boy will just casually ascend to godhood. Apparently, Minato recently got sucked into some sacred realm, so the wind god was planning to bless him with even more power. But the mountain god put his foot down because our boy wouldn't be able to return to being human after that. But the real question wasn't if he'd get power, but what Minato would even do with all that divine juice. After some serious trekking, Minato finally found the sweetest, juiciest bamboo shoots. Just as he was fumbling around for a shovel, a giant bear suddenly popped up, making our boy completely freak out. The mountain god possessed his familiar and told him not to be scared because the bear meant no harm. According to his familiar translators, it was thanking Minato for taking such good care of its leader, Kirin V. To repay Minato's kindness, the bear decided it would help him dig up the bamboo shoots. And just like that, it started using its sharp claws to help Minato harvest the bamboo. It also reminded Minato that this was peak season for bamboo shoots, so he should get them into his belly ASAP. The mountain god also advised him to eat them right there, because freshly picked stuff is always the best. As luck would have it, Minato actually brought his cooking utensils, so he whipped up some bamboo shoots with soy sauce and mustard to share. By the way, Minato also asked if his imprisonment power had anything to do with digging up bamboo shoots. But the mountain god said they had absolutely nothing to do with each other, which utterly baffled our boy. He just thought Minato looked too stressed, so the mountain god brought him up the mountain to relax a bit, that's all. And after tasting the mountain god's homegrown bamboo, Minato felt like this trip was totally worth it. Back at home, Minato invited the mountain god to play a few rounds of soji chess. The mountain god thought the rules sounded easy as pie, but after a few tries, he couldn't even win a single game against Minato. This made the mountain god incredibly salty, like how dare these puny little chess pieces defy a god. Since he couldn't win against Minato fair and square, the mountain god started playing dirty. Just then, the lake surface suddenly emitted a blinding golden light, grabbing both their attention. The mountain god casually said it was fine, just some people occasionally wandering into his garden. No sooner had he spoken than the god Ebisu popped right out of the lake. He immediately declared he wasn't some suspicious character like the mountain god had implied. Apparently, Ebisu had heard somewhere that a certain human had been blessed with power by many gods recently. So he decided to travel all the way here just to see what this legendary human looked like. And once he stepped into the garden, he had to admit it really was a peaceful place. Just then, Kirin unexpectedly shot a sharp, menacing glare at Ebisu, which completely puzzled him. But then Kirin V simply grabbed a can of beer and walked off. After a bit more looking around, Ebisu spotted a pretty interesting hot spring bath at our boy's place. So, he asked the mountain god for permission to try it out, and Ebisu gave Minato some fish cakes as a thank you gift. The package of cakes had all sorts of fillings, including the mountain god's absolute favorite mashed red bean paste. While Ebisu was soaking in the hot spring, the old man turtle and the little dragon pulled out some booze to drink, making it impossible for the fishing god to relax anymore. The old man told Minato that he was kind of missing the point, leaving our boy pretty confused. After that, Minato kept practicing his confinement powers by just writing on sticky notes. Just then, our legendary fox bride suddenly showed up in the garden, apparently lured by Minato's casual mini-hot spring. Seeing her there, Minato, being the polite host he is, just invited her to enjoy a relaxing soak. At first, the fox bride claimed she was super busy, but then quickly corrected herself, saying, "Well, not that busy." Minato, quickly realizing she was completely hooked, decided to just invite her to stay for lunch with him too. Well, if you put it like that, how can I possibly refuse? By the way, the fox then introduced herself as Onmyoji, a close attendant of the deity who rules the mountain next door. And just like any self-respecting god, she was absolutely obsessed with human-made food, especially the inari sushi Minato prepared for lunch. Spotting the mountain god who had just woken up, Onmyoji quickly paid her respects to Sir Wolf. The mountain god, in a rare moment of generosity, also allowed Onmyoji to dine here and use the hot spring for free, which left Minato utterly shocked because today, His Majesty actually looked divine for once. After just one taste of Minato's homemade sushi, Onmyoji felt herself getting absolutely overwhelmed, like a food critic in a cooking anime losing all their clothes from sheer deliciousness. After finishing her meal, Onmyoji gave Minato a golden peach as a return gift. This peach, she boasted, was plucked from a garden that was absolutely no less impressive than Minato's own. The only catch was that this was a divine-grade item, so Onmyoji advised Minato not to eat it, but rather keep it as a fancy decoration. Minato, being the humble guy he is, hesitated to accept such a precious gift. But the fox insisted it was fine, explaining that the neighboring mountain god actually sent her to show off his garden's superiority. Except, even our mountain god couldn't recall who this so-called neighboring mountain god even was. After delivering the gift, our fox bride was absolutely eager to finally dive into that hot spring. Perhaps it was from constantly soaking in it, but Minato himself didn't look like an ordinary human at all anymore. After Onmyoji left, Minato slowly started to realize that he was gradually drifting further and further away from the human world. And the mysterious words of Lord Ebisu, spoken while he was bathing, had hinted at this very thing. He really wanted to master his confinement powers, but he also felt a pang of fear at the thought of how much he might change. The mountain god, ever the wise one, advised him not to worry too much, because at the end of the day, Minato would always be Minato. As for his confinement powers, the mountain god felt that Minato's own stream of memories might just be the key to mastering them, because ever since he was a child, he'd possessed the ability to see special entities like deities. This reminded Minato of the first time he ever saw a Zashiki Warashi, back when he was just 5 years old. It was at the tender age of 5 that Minato first discovered he possessed psychic abilities. Back then, he'd accidentally stumbled upon a Zashiki Warashi just casually wandering around his house. And after some chatting, Minato eventually managed to befriend the Zashiki Warashi. She would often give Minato some 4-leaf clovers in exchange for a share of his sweets. Even though she looked like a child, the Warashi had actually been living in that house long before Minato. Whenever he had some free time, our chill lead Minato would often invite his mischievous companion to play some traditional folk games. He soon realized his grandpa could actually see tons of unique yokai that he himself couldn't even perceive. A prime example was that notorious monkey, Hi-Hi, who specialized in trashing everyone else's gardens. Whenever Minato got his hands on some gourmet goodies, he'd bring them back and split half with his little monkey friend. This heartwarming gesture made Grandpa feel like Minato was an older brother looking out for his younger sister. One time, while Minato was returning from bug hunting, that little rascal Hi-Hi snatched the sun hat right off his head just to mess with him. Needless to say, Minato was not amused. He ran to tattle to Grandpa, but the old man just shrugged it off as completely normal. He simply said, "Well, whether you can befriend them or not is entirely up to you, kiddo." That comment made our young protagonist extremely pouty, seeing as even Grandpa wasn't taking his side. The very next day, Minato decided to sneak into the house through the back door, trying to avoid that little menace. Hi. But alas, he was still instantly discovered, and his hat was confiscated, just like the day before. This time, though, our guy was a lot calmer. Minato laid down the law. No more teasing, and in return, he'd gift Hi-Hi a box of super delicious sponge cake. The monkey's eyes lit up like Christmas lights at the sight of the cake box, but Minato made it clear, hat first, then cake. The instant he finished speaking, the monkey instantly plopped the hat right back onto Minato's head, while simultaneously snatching the delicious sponge cake box from his hand. And just like that, Minato and Hi-Hi officially became the best of friends. Sometime later, Minato's beloved grandpa passed away, leaving our boy heartbroken. On a scorching hot day when Minato was in 5th grade, he was walking home from school with a friend. His friend, Renmaru, was dramatically complaining to the heavens about the heat, saying it felt like a literal furnace. Seeing this, Minato told his buddy to try imagining something cool, but it didn't seem to work out too well. Right then, a giant yokai unexpectedly materialized directly in front of Minato. Before he passed, Grandpa had sternly warned Minato, If he ever saw stray yokai wandering around, he needed to bolt immediately before they even noticed him. So, Minato urgently told his friend to rush home. But his buddy, completely oblivious to the yokai, had absolutely no idea what Minato was even talking about. Seeing their confusion, the yokai immediately turned to attack the two kids, but then it bizarrely vanished right before Minato's eyes, leaving him utterly bewildered. Just then, a mysterious old man appeared and casually asked both of them about a nearby cozy hot springs inn. While the inn was super comfy, if you didn't book way in advance, there was practically no chance of getting a room. So, the old man decided to just drop by Minato's house to negotiate with his parents, which left Minato completely perplexed since he had no idea how this guy knew his family ran a hot springs business. Luckily for him, a guest had unexpectedly canceled that day, leaving a single room available for the old man to enjoy. Ever since the old man started relaxing at their place, for some reason, all the yokai in the house suddenly became super restless and kept lingering near his room. One time, while Minato was studying at the cashier counter, the old man praised Minato's beautiful handwriting, which was a nice little flex. Our boy's pure and earnest soul was fully channeled into every single stroke of his brush. He didn't quite get the hidden meaning behind that advice, but it's what made his calligraphy so next level. And just like that, our boy Minato accidentally became the local go-to calligrapher for inn signs. Turns out that mysterious old man totally picked up on the fact that Minato's calligraphy had demon-slaying magic infused in it. Some then believed the old man was a wandering purifier, what they called an exorcist. Unlike Onmyoji, these roving exorcists operate super freely and are basically all peak-tier talent. No wonder that giant monster demon booked it the second the old man casually strolled in. Remembering the old man's cryptic past remarks, Minato suddenly figured out how to use his power of containment. So naturally, Minato immediately hit the books, or rather the brush, to practice his new skill. He even pictured himself getting trapped inside one of his own talismans for a true immersion experience. And just like that, Minato successfully power-leveled his containment technique to Mastery 7. Meanwhile, the poor Onmyoji were out here sweating bullets, fighting off a horde of evil spirits inside a dilapidated old house. Harima's squad was now critically low on magic power, leaving him no choice but to whip out Minato's legendary jade talismans. No sooner had he finished speaking, than Squad 2 just happened to drag an entire new swarm of evil spirits right to them. And all they had to do was flash Harima's talismans, and the evil spirits just poofed themselves into oblivion. So, after finally clearing out the evil spirits from the building, the squad of beauties were ready for a well-deserved vacation. But Harima only had one single jade talisman left, so he figured they'd be stuck grinding for ages to fully clear this place. Spotting his plight, the girls immediately started pressuring Harima to go buy more of those sweet, sweet jade talismans, which made things super awkward for him. Because these ladies didn't just want the talismans, they also wanted our boy Minato, the master of the house. So the very next afternoon, Harima found himself lugging a box of fancy pastries to Minato's garden, hoping to negotiate for more talismans. The second Harima stepped through the gate, he was immediately flattened by an overwhelming aura from Son-ten, practically gasping for air. It was like Son-ten was telepathically telling him, "Grab your talismans, then scram. We're trying to nap here." And when Harima even mentioned the talismans, the pond water suddenly started boiling, making him think the literal gods were throwing a divine tantrum. But Minato just casually told him not to worry, because they really weren't as annoyed as he thought. Harima heard that, and had to admit Minato was built different. The actual divine beasts of the house were throwing a fit, and our boy didn't even bat an eyelash. After that little interaction, Minato just handed Harima a fresh brand new stack of talismans. He casually mentioned that these new talismans were way more upgraded than the last batch, because he had just recently sealed some actual exorcist power inside these bad boys. The spiritual energy wouldn't leak out anymore, which meant their effectiveness got a massive boost. Minato also observed that Harima looked totally run down lately, probably because evil spirits had been popping up everywhere. Right on cue, Fongthun, the literal wind god, and Loithun, the thunder god, just casually popped over to Minato's place for a visit. Both of them instantly noticed that poor Harima looked utterly exhausted. So Loithun, being the helpful sort, suggested a quick zap of electricity to perk him right back up. Minato, hearing this, immediately informed Harima that the thunder god wanted to cure his aching back via electrocution. Before Harima could even process what was happening, the thunder god gave our poor Onmyoji a divine reality check with enough voltage to awaken a dormant god. And just like that, Harima was enjoying a peaceful, albeit electrically induced, nap right there in Minato's garden. Afterwards, our cozy lead took the mini mountain god into town to buy some pastries. On their way back, Minato suddenly sensed a dense, ominous aura nearby. The moment he registered it, a dilapidated sanctuary appeared right behind them, sucking both our MC and the mini god inside. Minato recognized this sacred land as the domain of a fallen god, based on its dark and corrupted environment. However, the mountain god quickly noted that this particular entity wasn't wielding much power. So the Honorable Mr. Wolf asked Minato to use his wind powers to casually tear open the space within. But if they just escaped like that, the place would become increasingly defiled, and the surrounding area would suffer too. Minato couldn't bear to let such a holy site remain corrupted, so he decided to venture deeper into the sanctuary to find the fallen god. After some exploration, Minato discovered a defiled sword plunged into the ground. But he knew this wasn't the god he was looking for, because true deities would never reside within man-made objects. It was merely a god that humans had invited to descend into the sword. Approaching it, Minato sensed that the god within seemed enraged by its neglect, as evidenced by the severe rust on the blade. Wishing for a more dignified end for the forgotten deity, Minato decided to use his new overpowered talisman to purify the malevolent miasma. If it were an ordinary talisman, it probably would have fizzled out after 36 seconds. But this was an upgraded talisman, so Minato didn't need much effort to liberate the sacred sword. The mountain god then helped him finish the job by bringing the now purified sword outside. With the sword finally freed, the abandoned sanctuary began to crumble, forcing Minato to use his wind power to make a hasty escape. Meanwhile, the old man was commanding his summoned beasts to make mincemeat of the evil spirits inside the building. Young Ik, ever since that one time he was spooked by the mountain god, had become utterly terrified of evil spirits. Fortunately, his colleague Horikawa appeared just in time to save him. Yet, instead of gratitude, Ich only managed to criticize her for being late. So, our resident queen decided to play a wind chime sound, eerily similar to the chimes from the mountain god's sanctuary, instantly traumatizing him. At this moment, the Onmyoji girls were surrounded by a swarm of evil spirits. Luckily, Harima arrived just in the nick of time, wielding the upgraded talismans to incinerate them all in a flash. This only amplified the girls' admiration for the Supreme Master, who crafted these ridiculously potent talismans. Just as they were marveling, Minato casually emerged from the abandoned sanctuary. The light emanating from the talismans in his hand shone so brightly, it was like the sun of truth piercing through their very souls. Our cozy lead himself was surprised to see serious, stoic Harima suddenly surrounded by a whole harem of long-legged beauties. There, Minato had a strange feeling that the hat the old man was wearing looked quite similar to the one worn by the... But our guy just shrugged it off, thinking it was probably just a coincidence. Little did he know, that bald guy was actually the son of the old man he'd just met. Just then, Harima casually noticed they were being watched by some randos, who happened to be exorcists. As soon as he got home, the mountain god immediately dug into his newly bought cherry blossom mochi. It was so ridiculously delicious that after just one bite, he instantly reverted to his full, glorious god form. The mountain god also found a temporary vessel for the god who was chilling inside the sword. It's set to recover and make itself at home in Minato's garden soon enough. Summer in the countryside is usually hotter than a dragon's breath, but Minato's garden, always a blissful 16.36 degrees Celsius, like a private AC unit. The mountain god noticed the unpredictable weather lately, but he wasn't stressed, because his current life was basically king-level comfort, just without the actual throne. The mountain god even wanted to give Minato's garden a serious VIP upgrade, which worried Minato that his powers might drain. But the mountain god just waved it off, saying it wasn't his first time shrinking, and honestly, the garden was still way too basic. Saying that, the mountain god then casually unleashed his magic, instantly conjuring a full-blown river right inside the garden. And just for good measure, he added a majestic waterfall and a quaint stone bridge spanning the new river. And after giving Minato's garden its ultimate glow-up, the mountain god shrunk right back down, tiny as a chihuahua. Turns out, this was the legendary chihuahua power Anya was always talking about. Go figure. His family members had reminded the mountain god countless times to hold back on his powers, but our resident fun-loving deity just couldn't resist. Because, honestly, tweaking the garden scenery to match the season was basically his favorite hobby. Meanwhile, his actual mountain and shrine were probably gathering cobwebs from neglect. He figured if it's natural, it's best to just let it be natural. Plus, the little dragon was pretty impressed with the mountain god's newly installed natural waterfall. The god Minato rescued from the sword still hadn't fully woken up though. Just then, a whole school of koi fish unexpectedly swam through the new river. Then, they leapfrogged over the big waterfall and flew straight into the sky, leaving Minato utterly jaw-dropped. It instantly reminded Minato of the legend of carp transforming into dragons. Word on the street was, they were actually kin of the god living in the next town over. Speaking of kin, the black cat dependent from the neighboring mountain hadn't dropped by in ages. But the mountain god muttered that it was probably better if she didn't, since the peach she'd gifted him was half-eaten and pretty meh. Just then, the clear blue sky was suddenly swallowed by ominous dark clouds. And then a gigantic blue dragon unexpectedly peeked out from behind the clouds. Well, looks like the whole carp-to-dragon legend was 100% real. Apparently, it used to be an acquaintance of Ying Long, so our dragon friend stepped out to greet his pal. The blue dragon immediately shrank down, just like Ying Long, to casually check out Minato's garden. A guest bringing gifts? Now that's what we call top-tier hospitality, folks. Top tier. Even our chill Minato felt a little awkward about accepting so many gifts from the green dragon. Meanwhile, the mountain god was absolutely here for the gift-giving. The more the merrier. So Minato, being the polite country boy he is, reciprocated with a bottle of his finest, highest-tier wine. After the green dragon flew off, Minato unboxed all those mysterious gifts, only to find they were mooncakes. Our mountain god, the literal snack hoarder, wasted no time devouring a few of them. Even though they were packed with his favorite fillings, it still wasn't enough to return him to his full, glorious form. So Minato, ever the enabler, just told the mountain god to go ahead and finish the rest of the boxes. But alas, his majestic form was still stuck, looking like a tiny, aggressive chihuahua. His divine associates figured he probably just needed to eat even more for his power to fully recover. So Minato, embracing his role as personal chef, decided to take the Chihuahua mountain god out to buy some more high-class cakes to gobble down. On their way back, they coincidentally passed by the mountain where that mysterious black cat resides. Minato used to think only supermassive, colossal mountains were under divine protection, but the mountain god assured him that size doesn't matter, apparently. No sooner had he said that than an unknown surge of power instantly swept Minato towards the mountain. Seeing this, the mountain god reluctantly told the other divine entity to cut it out. Minato then looked up towards the Torii Gate and, to his surprise, spotted a magnificent nine-tailed fox. Minato initially thought it was some kind of monster, but the mountain god informed him that this wife was actually a literal goddess, known as Tenko. Witnessing the subtle tension between the two deities, Minato assumed they were beefing, but the mountain god quickly dismissed the idea. Plus, Tenko had only invited Minato to visit her sacred grounds today, so the mountain god politely excused himself and bounced. Minato was a little confused because while this was his first time meeting Tenko, it wasn't her first time seeing him, since deities can apparently track the every move of their associates. The real reason the mountain god was giving his wife the side-eye, he wasn't sure if Tenko was inviting Minato over to hang out, or if she was actually eyeing his stash of high-class mooncakes. Minato actually wanted to visit that place too, but Lord Wolf ominously suggested there would be no guarantee he'd ever make it back. Meanwhile, Harima was busy chatting with the resident troll about the sudden appearance of exorcists at the local hospital. Turns out one of them was Anu, a notorious exorcist from the neighboring town. Apparently, Anu and his goons had been spotted lurking around Hotown pretty frequently. Their motives were still unclear, but one thing was for sure, it was definitely something shady. Meanwhile, these two clowns were inside an old lady's house, aggressively peddling charms, looking like straight-up MLM scammers. As soon as he got home, the mountain god immediately devoured all the mooncakes Minato just bought, yet he still couldn't revert to his true default form. Lately, the divine tree has been thriving, shedding quite a few branches in the process. Just then, Minato suddenly had a brilliant idea, so he's decided to grab the pile of wood and start carving. But for Colleen, it was an absolutely terrifying sight, because it had witnessed countless times humans wielding those sharp objects to slaughter countless creatures. It was terrified Minato was about to butcher it, forcing the ancient turtle to remind Killin to lay off the crack pipe. In reality, these were just room keychains for guests at Minato's family's cozy hot springs inn. He just wanted to try making them using the divine tree branches, since it had been ages since he last carved anything. Minato just casually carved some intricate patterns, then sealed his own divine power inside, turning it into a ridiculously overpowered good luck charm. Speaking of which, our unbothered MC gifted one of these charms to the mountain god, even though he had no idea if it would help him revert to his true Wolf King form. Just as this cozy scene unfolded, a random squirrel popped up on the wall. And this cheeky squirrel had the audacity to ask Minato for a charm, even if it was just a faulty one. Our MC, ever the generous legend, casually handed the squirrel a faulty charm. But of course, even a faulty charm from Minato was more than enough to cleanse the lingering malevolent spirits tormenting the squirrel's wife. A little while later, Minato pulled out a feast of inari tofu he'd just bought from the street, ready to share with his family, which now included a literal mountain god. The mountain god, suddenly on high alert, urged everyone to eat fast because he could smell that nine-tailed fox waifu somewhere nearby. And wouldn't you know it, speak of the devil, and the foxy devil herself appeared. Tsumugi claimed she wasn't here for the inari tofu, but the moment Minato offered her a piece, her eyes lit up like a tractor's headlights. Our MC even offered her a rare market-unobtainable inari soba, making the fox waifu absolutely ecstatic. But then it suddenly dawned on her. She wasn't here just to chow down, but to apologize to Minato. Turns out, the divine fox had forcibly dragged our protagonist into her sacred domain the other day. Minato, being the chillest MC ever, didn't mind at all. It's not every day you get to meet a multi-tailed deity like the divine fox, right? Apparently, the number of tails a divine fox has is directly proportional to her power level. Plus, Sumuji's mountain shrine gets tons of visitors, so her power is amplified like crazy. Just then, the black cat suddenly sprouted 9 tails, because the divine fox had casually possessed it to chat with Minato. The divine fox proceeded to advertise her super pure abode, extending an invitation for Minato and his gourmet inari tofu to come over. Naturally, the mountain god immediately roasted the divine fox, calling her a gluttonous fiend who'd eat his entire house if she got the chance. The divine fox wasn't about to back down either, instantly escalating into a verbal smackdown with the mountain god, with neither willing to concede. And when words fail, that's usually when legendary deities resort to violence. The mountain god quickly fired off an attack, but the divine fox effortlessly blocked it. The divine fox mused that given the mountain god's current power, Sumuji's body alone was more than enough to handle him. Upon hearing this, the mountain god went full berserker mode, charging at the divine fox like 2 petty kids fighting over a toy. Compared to 500 years ago, the fox goddess felt the mountain god's power had significantly dwindled. While these 2 legendary figures were duking it out, a stray attack suddenly veered straight for Minato. Seeing this, the mountain god reluctantly admitted defeat, taking the hit for our MC. After her effortless victory, the divine fox let out a triumphant roar that echoed through the heavens. This was their 33,332nd friendly spar, and the fox goddess had won a casual 22,222 times. The divine fox then roasted the mountain god again, claiming he'd gotten weak because he kept clinging to humans. But the mountain god fired back, calling the divine fox a manipulative schemer who lures priests to her Inari shrine. The divine fox just shrugged it off, because honestly, before he bounced, Master Fox gave his old bro a heads up. Too much interaction with humans, and a god might just poof out of existence. That left our boy Minato wondering if he could even hang around the mountain god, but Lord Wolf just casually said it was fine since he chose to be there. Meanwhile, these wannabe exorcist clowns were raking in cash by running a spiritual pyramid scheme with fake talismans. So our boy Minato taught them a casual lesson for daring to cause trouble right on his turf. After that, Minato booted them all the way to the forest's edge, leaving them absolutely seething. And then, those 2 accidentally stumbled upon Minato's janky broken talisman. Today, Minato's mom sent him a care package of oranges from home, and he just wanted everyone to enjoy them. The mountain god still hadn't reverted to his default form, and was looking a bit down in the dumps today. Mistaking his grumpy waifu for sulking after losing to Master Fox, Minato suggested they hit uptown for some yummy snacks. Even his resident ferret squad sensed their master was in a funk, so they nudged him to go out and chill. So Minato took a cozy stroll through town. He casually wished the mountain god could sit on his shoulder, and poof, the mountain god hopped right on, looking exactly like a certain iconic electric mouse. Despite the town being packed with amazing eateries, the mountain god made a beeline for his beloved bookstore. 100 years ago, this place was just a humble shack. Then the mountain god popped over to the publishing house to have a casual chat. There was this one struggling employee at the publishing house who just couldn't catch a break, rumored to be constantly haunted by evil spirits. The director, however, was totally impressed, because his red bean paste cakes were the mountain god's absolute favorite. If the mountain god heard about this, who knows, he might just bless them with another casual visit. Our clueless employee just politely agreed, secretly doubting if the mountain god was even real. Right on cue, an evil spirit decided to ruin everyone's day by attacking our boy. Thankfully, the mountain god made a dramatic entrance just in time to casually punt the evil spirit away. When our boy Minato called the creature right in front of him mountain god, the employee was absolutely shook. Not because he had some secret psychic powers, but because Lord Wolf decided to grace them with his presence. Lord Wolf was actually super excited about new articles featuring the employee's cakes, which made our boy literally tear up. Our employee then pleaded with the mountain god to meet his director, because his boss had been dreaming of this moment forever. The employee immediately speed-dialed his director and the rest of the staff, announcing that the mountain god was here and Lord Wolf himself was ready to meet everyone. Naturally, the director immediately dropped to his knees to greet the mountain god. Turns out the former chairman used to tell him all sorts of legendary tales. The former chairman apparently owed his life to the mountain god, which is why he always treated the mountain god to all the best sweet shops. Turns out, even before he met our boy Minato, Lord Wolf was already a notorious tastemaker in his own right. And when he found out the mountain god still kept up with the latest magazine releases, the director was absolutely ecstatic. He was even there to casually drop some wisdom on the editorial board. The next issue should feature finely ground red bean paste, not the coarse stuff, leaving everyone utterly speechless. The director immediately ordered the entire company to dedicate all their resources to glorifying finely ground red bean paste. His critical review session finished, the duo set off again, probably to find more snacks. Turns out, Not only was he tight with the bakery owner, but the mountain god also had the former chairman of the publishing house on speed dial. Our mountain god mused that back in his glory days, way more folks could actually see him. Right on cue, a mouth-watering aroma of curry hit them, so they obviously had to investigate. The waitress gave Minato 2 menus, which totally stumped him, as he thought she could actually see the mountain god. But the mountain god quickly clarified, nope, she didn't have a single spiritual bone in her body. So the mountain god casually used his magic to levitate the menu, instantly sending Minato into a panic about getting caught. But our mountain god couldn't care less, because, get this, there was another deity chilling at the next table. This stoic dude, just trying to enjoy his meal over there, was completely swarmed by a whole mob of yokai. Since Minato had been away from his family for so long, his spiritual senses had dulled a bit, poor guy. And this special curry spot? Honestly, if you squint, it's pretty much just like his backyard garden. Minato then ordered a plate of curry, and luckily, the mountain god was totally digging this gourmet flex. Mid-meal, our guy casually noticed the scissors at the next table just started moving on their own. And get this, the dude sitting there was even playfully teasing it like it was his pet. Minato asked the mountain god about it, who explained the scissors had become a tsukumogami, basically, an object that gained a spirit after long human use. Turns out Minato had a similar item back home too, his trusty wind chime. It had never moved in front of Minato, choosing to embrace its identity as just a normal chill wind chime. But it also made sure to remind Minato to give it a good cleaning every now and then. Minato then noticed the shop's doorbell wasn't ringing anymore, despite definitely chiming when he walked in. The mountain god explained that, yep, it was another Tsukumogami. It would chime whenever it sensed customers carrying some spiritual baggage or attachments. That was precisely why the waitress brought Minato 2 menus, and why this joint served literally gods and monsters alike. Right then, the mountain god's familiars reported that some exorcists were visiting his home. These guys reeked of something utterly repulsive, so the 3 Martin spirits wanted absolutely nothing to do with them. So the mountain god casually tasked them with keeping an eye on things until he got back home. Turns out, these 2 exorcists had sniffed out Minato's place thanks to a broken amulet they just happened to find in the forest. Then they started bad-mouthing the homeowner, claiming only a total blockhead would live in such a stinky, rice-chaff-ridden area. Well, that was more than enough for the familiars to confirm these guys had truly rotten personalities. No wonder they reeked so badly, despite looking physically clean. The 2 exorcists hammered away at Minato's doorbell, but when no one answered, they just went ahead and tried to pick the lock. Since they rarely ventured outside, this was genuinely the first time the familiars had ever encountered such trash-tier humans. With the mountain god's permission, the 3 Martin spirits decided it was time to teach those 2 a very important lesson. Noticing his buddy was failing miserably to pick the lock, Andu suddenly snatched his crowbar back. And just like that, he miraculously managed to open the door, only because the familiars decided to let him. Feeling emboldened, he immediately started trash-talking the homeowner, like how dumb can a person be? Seriously, living without a shred of common sense or caution. But whose family gets hurt, or who's the real idiot? That's still up in the air, my friend. Then the 2 dorks called out for the owner but got 0 response. And when the owner's away, well, this place is basically ours now, right, buddy? They casually strolled right through the gate and into the house. Suddenly, Andu caught a faint whiff of hometown oranges, even though there wasn't an orange tree in sight. Taking advantage of the owner's absence, the 2 decided to head inside and snag a few more talismans. But this house was ridiculously huge. They walked forever and couldn't find a single room. Andu snapped at his buddy to stop being dense, because they hadn't even left the hallway yet. That's when it finally clicked. There was something seriously off about this place, especially with that orange scent getting stronger and stronger. Turns out, the mischievous fox trio was literally munching on oranges right over their heads. Good thing it was the pile of oranges Minato's mom had sent over. Otherwise, the 3 foxes would have been suffocated by the sheer stench of those guys' souls. Just then, the hallway of the house suddenly vanished, sending the 2 intruders running for their lives. And as the void seemed to swallow them whole, they suddenly found themselves back in front of the house gate. They scrambled away from that spooky house faster than you can say plot twist, much to the absolute glee of our mischievous fox trio. Their hasty escape, however, was conveniently witnessed by one of our protagonist's familiars. After a satisfying meal, Minato casually strolled back home. He figured making the mountain god happy would finally get him back to his regular non-whiny self. But apparently, that wasn't the case. Oh, and by the way, the mountain god casually mentioned that some punk kids had messed with Minato's place, scaring his familiars half to death. Later that afternoon, Minato and the mountain god happened upon a roadside shrine, where an elderly lady was making offerings to some great deity. Spotting Minato in the distance, the old lady gave him a friendly wave. Just then, the old lady's daughter-in-law showed up. Apparently, she'd snuck out, and her family was worried sick. Before heading off, Minato, ever the curious one, asked the old lady who this great deity she was talking about was. The daughter-in-law explained that it was the mountain god, protector of this very mountain, and her mother-in-law's trusted deity. That's why the old lady would regularly come to worship the mountain god's Ksitigarbha statue. With that, the daughter-in-law politely excused herself and her mother. And just like that, the mountain god suddenly snapped back to his true, imposing form, looking way more majestic than he ever did while freeloading at Minato's place. Minato, ever the casual flexer, congratulated the mountain god on getting his mojo back, which just left the old deity utterly bewildered. Turns out, the mountain god couldn't care less about that epic battle with the nine-tailed fox. His real gripe this morning? That rude publisher dared to pick raw red beans, which meant our boy Minato, but our boy Minato was just glad to see the mountain god finally getting his groove back. Guess all that unwavering townie belief works wonders, because Mr. Wolf's spiritual energy bounced back faster than a rogue slime. Meanwhile, the penguin god of mischief was giving our MC the lowdown on those wannabe exorcists. After a frantic sprint, those two no-name losers found themselves at a construction site, right outside a forgotten sanctuary, just begging for trouble. Today, Harima casually dropped by Minato's garden for a visit. And naturally, every single time he shows up, the mountain god and his mischievous weasel NPC crew go all out pranking him. The newly awakened Phoenix decided Harima's head was the perfect perch, making him feel like he was carrying a couple 100 tons of spiritual burden. Even the mountain god had to commend Harima, impressed by how much he enjoyed eating onions, if you catch our drift. But hey, if chugging truckloads of onions means the town stays peaceful, then it's totally worth it. He mentioned that Minato's upgraded talismans had a longer than usual effect, making his job way easier. Yeah, lately, evil spirits have been popping up everywhere in the streets, and he just can't cleanse them all. So Harima's only option was to plaster talismans on every nook and cranny to protect everyone. But instead of diminishing, the evil spirits just kept multiplying. Even though the source wasn't found yet, Minato was just happy to lend Harima a hand. And he also brought some gifts for our boy, representing all the family members back home. Because the emerald glow he casually flexed the other day turned all the ladies into his newest, most hardcore fangirls. While Minato was chatting with Harima, the Hollow Chiefs couldn't resist sneaking a few bites to curb their cravings. By the way, Harima also asked about those two exorcists who conveniently broke into Minato's house. He figured those two clowns would never learn their lesson, so they're probably cooking up another scheme, and warned Minato to stay on high alert. The second Harima left, the three deputy Hollows wasted no time snatching some cake. Meanwhile, the Hollow Chief was deep in thought about the rampant evil spirit phenomenon in town. He figured it could be some super evil malevolent force at play, but secretly hoped he was just totally overreacting. Just then, the sword-dwelling deity awakened, rocking a street-style vibe with literal snakes writhing behind him. Minato actually thought this was the evil force the mountain god was rambling about earlier, but seeing the guy yawn so dramatically, he figured probably not. Turns out, the street-style god had already heard about Minato from his sister, Amaterasu. He thought our boy would be some extraordinary legend, but was shocked to find him surprisingly normal. And this very street-style god was none other than Susanoo, the moon god, and younger brother to the sun goddess Amaterasu. Susanoo also offered a casual apology for just straight-up barging into our MC's house like he owned the place. So as a peace offering, the street-style god decided to gift him a fancy sake cup. The Orochi's eyes lit up at the sight of the sake, but Susanoo quickly shut that down, declaring it wasn't for trash like them. Seeing the Orochi was still being stubborn, Susanoo decided it was time to teach it who the boss really was. Minato tried to stop the impending brawl, but calling the mountain god was useless. He was currently snoring louder than a monster truck. Minato begged Susanoo not to duel inside his cozy home, but Susanoo wasn't having it. Apparently, slicing that snake would reveal the legendary Kusanagi sword from its tail. Susanoo scoffed. What man doesn't love shiny toys like swords? But Minato, being our unbothered farming king, was utterly uninterested, which just infuriated the street-style god into attacking him. Minato tried to block the attack with his wind powers, but Susanoo declared he was still a total newbie. So he decided to drag our boy to his personal holy training grounds for some tough love training. Knowing he had absolutely zero say in the matter, he could only cry out for the mountain god's help. Then our street god casually picked him up, soared into the sky, and just dropped him straight into the holy grounds. Orochi tried to apologize to the mountain god for Susanoo, saying that immature god just wanted someone to play with. With that said, they both teleported inside the holy grounds to rescue poor Minato. Meanwhile, Susanoo unceremoniously dropped Minato onto the ground, leaving him in agony. If our boy was a waifu, our street god would be carrying him like a delicate flower. The mountain god and Orochi appeared right after, bringing Minato some relief. This place made the mountain god nostalgic for old Japan. Instead of rescuing his apprentice Minato, he just chilled out like a lazy dog, making Minato completely exasperated. Right after that, Minato immediately used his wind wall technique to block Susanoo's sword slashes. Since his wind wall was on cooldown, our boy was forced to run for his life. He begged Susanoo to stop, but this was Susanoo's domain, and he did whatever he pleased. After a while of running, Minato finally got hit by the moon god's attack. He accused Susanoo of playing dirty, because he didn't even have a single weapon, but who said a wind attribute user needed a sword anyway? But Minato had no intention of forging a weapon, which drove Susanoo absolutely nuts. For Minato, just being able to protect himself and those around him was enough. That's why Susanoo kept calling him boring and bland. With his weak little wisp of wind, he couldn't even protect himself, let alone others. Meanwhile, Minato was actually the very first human to be granted power by the wind god. And if he kept stagnating like this, the wind god would be the one suffering the consequences. This completely shocked Minato, because he never expected to be the very first human blessed by the wind god. On top of that, he was a legendary deity. So Minato decided to humble himself, hoping Susanoo would teach him more. But our street god wasn't thrilled at all, because Minato's actions were basically calling him an old geezer. The mountain god also agreed with Susanoo, saying it felt like only yesterday he was crying for his mom. Yet now he was a big shot, causing trouble everywhere. After that, the two quickly downed a few jugs of sake to alleviate their boredom. The mountain god's alcohol tolerance wasn't what it used to be, because now he was a dessert aficionado. Seeing the mountain god chatting so happily, Minato couldn't help but feel happy too. But that made Susanoo think our boy was mocking him, so he lunged forward to slash at him again. Meanwhile, a bunch of idle exorcists were busy tearing off the talismans painstakingly placed by the Onmyojis. Because this would make more evil spirits appear, and they would get more lucrative commissions. But before these evil spirits could even try to ruin the vibe, our guy's Shikigami casually made them all disappear. Meanwhile, these so-called exorcists were absolutely petrified of our boy, acting like they just saw their ultimate nightmare. That's when our MC figured out these guys were nothing but glorified scam artists, specializing in breaking up magical love charms. Which of course explained why the evil spirits weren't just not decreasing, but actually showing up in record numbers. These clowns were literally making the problem worse. Naturally, our boy decided it was high time to teach these goons a lesson they wouldn't forget. But first, Harima wanted to dig deeper into why these evil spirits were multiplying like crazy. Just then, Himikawa reported that a whole party of evil spirits was gathering in an empty lot, basically throwing a spectral rave. And yet, the guy who was supposed to be carrying the Onmyoji team was currently getting absolutely clowned on by Susanoo. So he decided to retaliate with a legendary sealing technique, but our resident city boy dodged it as effortlessly as Faker on a good day. Susanoo was reading Minato's long-range attacks like a children's picture book, forcing him to switch to close combat. Minato then used himself as bait, trying to lure the god-tier city boy as close as possible. Then, he poured all his strength into a legendary sealing move, which actually took Susanoo by surprise. Susanoo admitted that while Minato was still pretty weak, that last attack actually had some serious backbone. He kept calling Minato weak, but for a normal human to pull off the divine Jesua's techniques so flawlessly, Susanoo conceded that was worthy of some old-school respect. After all that action, both were starving, so the city boy invited Minato to grab a bite. So, Minato decided to bring everyone back to his place for a humble home-cooked meal. Our boy Minato, being peak lazy, just offered the god-tier city boy some leftovers from yesterday. But Susanoo apparently hadn't eaten in ages, because he absolutely inhaled the food like he'd never seen a plate before. He loved every single dish, except for this one stewed purple radish. Minato casually explained that he just used pre-mixed water for it because, well, he was lazy and wanted to cook it fast. And that's precisely why you're so weak, Susanoo retorted. Because of your sloppiness. Meanwhile, Orochi had been completely plastered by Minato's fierce beasts, getting wasted fast and snoring loud enough to drive the old turtle absolutely bonkers. Susanoo actually complimented Minato, saying that despite his small stature, he could really put away the food, even though Susanoo himself wasn't far behind. He also knew all about the mountain god constantly overusing his power and ending up shrunk down to pocket size. And with evil spirits still running rampant, he really hoped Minato would get stronger to help out the mountain god. So, it turns out Susanoo's whole training Minato thing was all just to support the mountain god. Classic! Realizing this, Minato thanked Susanoo, but the god just shrugged it off, claiming he was just doing it on a whim. Then Susanoo had the audacity to challenge Minato to another solo match, making our poor boy silently weep. But before Minato could even squeak out a reply, his big sister Amaterasu swooped in and dragged her little brother home by the collar. Just then, his trio of followers showed up with a massive pile of wild fruits, offering them to Susanoo. Susanoo totally loved the fruits, but his sister absolutely refused to let her immature little brother stay and cause any more chaos. As soon as the Onmyoji group arrived at the empty lot, they stumbled upon a supermassive Even the local mountain god, who's usually just chilling, and that veteran exorcist who once checked out our boy Minato's place, couldn't help but sense something seriously off. M